going to call to order the June 20 Planning and Zoning meeting. First item on our agenda is roll call.
Commissioner Levison. Commissioner Tedda.
Here.
Commissioner Poland.
Present.
Commissioner Schernick.
Here.
Commissioner Kohler. Commissioner Flagg. Commissioner Tetzloff.
Okay, any communications from Don Burchett, Planning Manager?
Chairman Schernick, there's some information for one of your hearings tonight. That was additional information that came in after the packet went out, and so those are at your desk.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is the public invited to be heard. This is for anybody who wants to speak about something that is not on tonight's agenda. We'd love to hear from you about that. We do have somebody signed up, so we will start there. The way it works is that you get 5 minutes, 4 minutes of a green light, 1 minute of a yellow light, and then I will politely cut you off at the red light. First on the list is Bill Irwin. If you'd like to come forward, state your name and address for the record, and we'd like to hear what you have to say.
Hi, my name is Bill Irwin, 227 Cattail. Okay, my name is Bill Irwin, 227 Cattail, longtime Longmont resident. And my concern is the development proposal for Great Western and 3rd Avenue, roughly. The 280 unit apartment complex that is perhaps going in there, 4 stories high. And one of my biggest concerns, first of all, is parking. With that many units and that short of a space, I know that the parking is going to be a disaster. There's no public transportation in the area. There's very limited police presence in that area because that's where I live at this current time. And I'm also worried that Roosevelt Park has a density level that will pale in comparison to this proposal on the outskirts of town. And so we know that when Roosevelt Park went in, some crime rates went up, especially with the parking lot situation. And I have those same concerns at this location also. So that's my spiel. It's a short, sweet, but I just wanted to say my point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Irwin.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there anybody else who would like to speak about something that's not on tonight's agenda right now? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public invited to be heard. Next is approval of our meeting minutes from May 16, 2018. Any discussion or any motions to approve? Commissioner Poland.
I move that we approve the May 16, 2018 minutes.
All right, motion to approve the minutes. Commissioner Levison. Okay, Jane, we're still having a little trouble with her mic, so but Commissioner Levison has seconded the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none. Okay. All those who were present at the meeting, if you're in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we have 2 abstentions, Commissioner Flagg and Commissioner Kohler. Otherwise, it passes unanimously. Okay, minutes are approved. Next is a public hearing item, 1601 to 1607 Kimbark Street Conditional Use Site Plan Extension Request, PZR 2018-6 with Senior Planner Ava Parachevsky.
Good evening, Chair Schernick and Commissioners. Ava Parachevsky, Planning and Development Services. This first item is a request for an extension of time on a conditional use site plan approval for a 9-unit apartment building at 1601 Kimbark. This project was approved by the Commission in February 2017, but it received its final approval from the DRC in June 2017. The Land Development Code requires that a building permit application be submitted for that project within 1 year of final approval. The applicant has filed a request for an extension of time due to an issue with the geotech report, which states that a more costly and extension foundation system would be required. This info wasn't known at the time the site plan was being approved, but happened during getting ready for building permits, so the applicant's requesting additional time, and they're here tonight. They do not have a formal presentation, but we'll be happy to answer any questions about the geotech report.
Thank you, Ava. Let's go ahead and, oh wait, they don't have a presentation, right? Okay. Any clarifying questions for Ava at this time? Any questions for the applicant at this time? Seeing none, this is a public hearing item. We will open the public hearing on this. If nobody has signed up to speak about this item, but if anybody in the audience would like to come forward and talk about this particular item, please do so now. Seeing no one coming forward, we'll close the public hearing. It goes back to discussion amongst the commission. Any thoughts, ideas, questions, concerns, discussion? Don't all race forward. Commissioner Levison.
I just have one question. If this engineering issue cannot be solved, what then?
Good question. Ava, do you want to take that one?
The applicant's here, maybe the applicant can answer that question. This is really a building permit issue. Is Brady Burke here? He's supposed to be here at 7. Yes, the applicant is not here at the moment, but he was aware that the meeting was at 7 tonight. All we can say from city staff's perspective is that, they've got to have the right foundation that meets the requirements of the geotech report in order to get building permits. So it's not that it can't be done, it's that they needed more time what I was told is they needed more time to explore alternative foundation systems. So it's not that it's not doable, they were just looking for a more cost-effective way, and, I don't know, perhaps if there isn't one, they'll just have to go with the one that's doable.
Let me ask a kind of a similar but different question, which is to you in terms of our process. If we were to deny this tonight, then the applicant to proceed with the project would have to come through us again in order to resubmit the entire proposal.
Yes, Chair Shernick, I believe the deadline to submit a building permit was June 29th, or the end of this month for sure. And so if they don't do that, they would have to come back in through the process all over again.
Okay. Commissioner Poland?
So Ava, if somebody else wanted to come into that property and do their own development, they would also face the same issue if they wanted to tear down what's currently there and build something?
Commissioner Poland, so the question is if another developer comes in, wants to do a different project, you mean? Absolutely. Anything that deviates from the approved site plan, regardless, would have to come back in through our process.
Okay, and question for Don Burchett. There is something in our code saying that if an applicant is not present at a meeting, we have some options, right?
Chairman Shernick, that's correct. I'm trying to find that section right now.
Okay. Commissioner Tetzloff.
I would say too, in terms of Commissioner Poland's question, I could be wrong, but if a different project came in, maybe of a different building size, they may not necessarily require the same depth that these guys would. And so I don't know if the project was obviously similar to this one, it would require this, but that doesn't necessarily mean every different project would have these same requirements on it.
Commissioner Kohler.
I was wondering about the timeline for the extension. Is that standard that we'd give them a whole year? It seems like that's what was approved initially, right? And then we're doubling that?
Right, Chair Shernick and Commissioner Kohler, yes. It's at your discretion, really. Nothing in the code says that an extension automatically gives you 1 year. You could say 6 months or, whatever your prerogative is.
Did they request the year specifically?
They did request 1 year. They did tell me that they didn't think they needed a full year to explore other foundation systems, but they just were requesting a year because it was an indeterminate amount of time. They just didn't know how long it would take.
Don's looking with knitted brow, looking for that bit of code. I believe one of our options is to just dismiss the item.
Another minute or two, I think I can try and word search to find it.
Okay. Commissioner Teta.
Alan? Good. All of the neighborhood meeting documentation, some of the neighbors' objections, that kind of thing, were they newly created, or was this all just regurgitated stuff that we'd seen last time?
I believe it's everything from the previous time that we reviewed that. Is that correct, Ava?
That's correct, Chair Sharnick. This is just the packet that was given to you a year ago. The code doesn't require us to renotice it as a public hearing. It's already approved, and they're just asking for an extension on building permits.
Got it. Thank you.
Commissioner Levison.
Chairman, could we maybe just put this item off to vote to just put it at the end of the agenda? And that would satisfy, keep us moving.
Dawn, how close are you?
I would like to think I'm real close, but under
Okay.
pressure, probably not.
Okay. So thank you, Commissioner Levison. That's a good idea. We could just table this until the end of tonight's meeting.
Correct.
Okay. All right. No, we've already done the public hearing section on it. So I'll make a motion to table this until we get more clarification on what happens when an applicant's not present. So we will take this back up after we finish item number 8. Oh, well, my motion is to take it back up on after item number 8 on our agenda. Any second to that motion? Commissioner Levison.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Levison. All those in favor, let's just do a voice vote. All right. Anybody opposed? Okay, none. So we will table that until after item 8 on our agenda. We'll move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is Hover Crossing Car Wash PUD, PZR 2018-7, Senior Planner Eva Parajewski.
Good evening. Again, it's me, Ava. Hover Crossing Car Wash, preliminary PUD plan. This item is. So I'll start with just orienting the group to, again, it was in your packets, the project location. This is on the east side of Hover Street, north of 18th Avenue in the Hover Crossing Shopping Center. It's just south of the St. Vrain Creek. It's about a 1.5 acre parcel, as you can see here in the yellow. This is the parcel right there. And it's zoned PUD mixed use, and car wash is a permitted use. Multitude of uses are allowed in the PUD mixed use. Tonight they're requesting a preliminary PUD plan for a 1-story tunnel car wash facility. The entry would be here, if I can get my mouse moving, from the south. You go to a pay kiosk here, and then you come around to the east side and you enter the tunnel and you go through and you exit. You can either exit directly onto Hover, or you can come up north of the building, and there's some vacuum stations that are, everything is self-serve here. There's 19 outdoor vacuum stalls. Sorry, my mic is off here. There are 4 employee spaces. Those are 3 here and then 1 back in here behind the trash enclosure. And the site is about over 42% of it has open space, as you can see up on the north adjacent to the creek. All this is a landscaping, as well as some site buffer landscaping here on the south and on the east. And their proposed hours of operation are 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. 7 days a week, consistent with most car washes in town. These are the elevations again. This is the tunnel. The primary building materials are brick, as you can see here, and some eaves up at the top. And then they have a black stone wainscot here at the bottom. And so going through the review process, we ensured that they met the design standards for the Hover Crossing Shopping Center. No major development issues. It's a pretty straightforward case. The only thing we identified during the review process was the air dryers, which dry the car as you come out of the tunnel, and the vacuums and the noise which those generate. And so, you know, it requires those outdoor vacuum stations up on the north side. The city's maximum decibel level is 55 decibels for residential, which is across the street, across Hover. And then that was for a receiving site, and then 65 decibels for commercial businesses. And that time frame for that decibel level is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So we had them prepare an acoustic analysis, which they submitted, is in your packet. The report says that the proposed air dryer that they're proposing is the least noisy of the various air dryers that can be bought for these tunnel systems. And it says the vacuum machine, which is located at the northeast corner of the property, and I can go back to it if you need to, that would need some noise mitigation with a wall, which is shown on the site plan. So as far as neighborhood input, we had a neighborhood meeting last year on May 16th. We had some questions, but no opposition. We sent out notices. We got some letters. They're in your packet. And then we sent a notice out on June 4th. I got one phone call, and that was mentioned in the staff report. So your options tonight are to approve it with no conditions, approve it with conditions, or deny it. We're recommending conditional approval. We do have some minor corrections on the DRC and with the plans, so that's what we're recommending, is that they satisfy all the requirements of the DRC. We have Tim and Shelley Walker, who are the owners and operators, who will be doing their presentation as well. And then we'll be available for questions.
Thank you, Ava. Let's go ahead to the presentation by the applicants, the Walkers.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Tim Walker. This is my wife, Shelley. Hi. And we're interested in opening the car wash and overcrossing. So I'll go through the presentation we have, which Ava's already covered a couple of those items, but we'll go ahead and speed through those if you are okay with that. So this was the elevations Ava showed. I'll go ahead and move through since you've already seen those. Noise limits she did briefly touch on. I just wanted to point out that the city noise ordinances of 55 and 65, which Ava covered, we will be meeting, and I will show you a diagram of acoustic analysis that was done by an acoustic engineer that will show you the actual data that they calculated for the site. So we've chosen very quiet dryers from Aero Dry to meet this noise ordinance, noise compliance. They will all face west. The greatest noise generation will face west towards Hover, which is also the traffic corridor. The main vacuums we have for the system will be enclosed in a 6 to 8 foot concrete masonry wall in the trash enclosure. So the vacuums will be protected and noise, mitigation with the trash enclosure. Actually, what? Yeah, the main vacuums, not the actual at the car vacuum, but the main turbines that run the vacuums in the trash enclosure. We will also comply, but we're adding this was before we actually had landscaping. So the landscaping will actually help buffer noise even more. This might be a little hard to see, but this is kind of an acoustic analysis from an engineering firm that shows with the different colored gradients how we meet the noise ordinance for each of the noise levels. I'll let you take a moment to look at that. You guys do see that on the screen, right? Can't remember the colors. It's not clear enough. But you can see that if you look at the dB levels across the street, we do meet the 55 dB noise levels for residential. Any questions on that? No? Ava also already covered this, but we do exceed the landscape minimums by a fair amount. So I'll probably leave it at that to, in the interest of time. Our lighting will be energy efficient LED lighting. That will be used across the facility. They'll be dimmable and allow us to adjust the light to meet all of the city lighting requirements and ordinances. Natural light will be allowed through the roof of the facility for daytime car wash activity, and will allow us to use natural light as opposed to artificial light and save energy that way as well. This is an example of a similar wash in Kansas at the evening, just to give you guys an idea of what it looks like at night. And obviously some of this could be dimmed or meet city ordinance if there were any concerns there. Another environmentally positive thing we're doing is reclaiming water. So 90% of the water will be captured from the facility that's in use, and then 60% of that captured water will also be reclaimed using a state-of-the-art Pure Clean reclamation system. There'll be oil and sand separator tanks, which will catch the sludge and things off the cars, and then we will have that pumped out to meet city requirements and make sure that never enters the sanitary sewer system. We will also capture all the reject water from our spot-free rinse and pass that and reclaim that into the system as well. So that's another positive, environmental addition to what we're doing. This is more of just to give people an idea of what I would say a differentiating factor of our particular wash is a belt conveyor versus a chain and roller conveyor. This allows the use of wider tires can enter the conveyor. You can have dually cars or dually trucks, wider tires, and in general it's a safer transport than our chain and roller. You can actually steer or brake on the conveyor and not disrupt the flow. The hours of operation, Ava did point out, were 7:30 to 7:30. We were going to ask if we could at least have a discussion if 7 to 8 would be appropriate, but if not, or if that's too late, we would understand, but we did want to ask if that was something we could do. And I'm not sure how that process works. Or do we?
We'll take that up after your presentation.
Okay, I appreciate that.
So keep working through.
Okay, thank you. Actually, the presentation, I believe, is over. So that's all I had for you guys today. Thanks for listening, commissioners. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you.
So stay close by. I'm sure we'll have some questions for him. Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Poland.
Ava, in the original presentation that you provided, the original hours were 7:30 to 7:30. It had made mention of the noise needing to meet certain decibels from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Does that mean that after 7 p.m. that there's a different level to meet for noise? And then this may also tie into their request to go to 8 p.m.
Good question, Chair Shernick and Commissioner Poland. It does change. I'd have to pull up the Muni code real quick. I don't know it off the top of my head. But yes, it does change
Okay.
from 7 p.m. to the morning.
Okay, can you go ahead and check that out for us then?
Yes.
Okay, while she's looking that up, this is a public hearing item. You can go ahead and have a seat. It's a public hearing item, and we'll open the public hearing right now. Nobody has signed up to talk about it, but if anybody in the audience would like to come forward and speak about this item, we'd love to hear from you. Anybody? So come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you can say what you wish.
Eileen Ager, 2655 Beach Circle. With the area that it's in, how many cars are going to be going through that? And like, I noticed like on the south side of Longmont, they have the car wash, and they have cars coming in on both sides, lined up. I mean, how many cars is it able to support before interfering with the other, like restaurants and liquor store in that area?
Great. Thank you, Ms. Ager. Anybody else who'd like to come forward, make any comments? Yes, sir.
James Egger, 2655 Spencer, or Beach Circle. I think what my wife was trying to ask is the fact that we have children, small children, that ride over to ride those paths, walk the dogs in those paths, and they enjoy being by the water. They go to the store, the Walgreens, and the the fast food joint over there. And I know now that they're opening up a Baskin Robbins in that area now, that they'll probably be going to that more often. And I know that a lot of the people that use that path would much rather see something other than a car wash going in there and seeing all the cars going in and out of there, and it's unsafe for the children that actually use those paths. But that's all I really want to say.
Thank you, Mr. Egger. Anybody else who'd like to come forward, speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Ava, do you have an answer for Commissioner Poland?
I do have an answer. So it drops to a maximum decibel level of 50 for residential at night and 55 decibels for commercial. Looking at the code really quickly here, it looks like those are the standards from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. I think I grabbed those hours from the acoustic report, and I think they were doing a general 7 to 7, thinking of the hours of operation. So it appears here that those hours are actually, or those limitations on the decimals are 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Commissioner Kohler.
Ava, can you clarify, is the DBA limit at the residential property boundary? Is that correct? Not at this property boundary?
Yes, Commissioner Kohler, that's correct. The receiving end residential property boundary.
And that would be to the west, correct?
Correct. The apartment across the street on Hover. Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Poland.
Can I have the applicant come back up? There's been a concern raised about the path to the north, and I believe I remember you saying something about some berming or something that's going to go up on the north side. So if you can speak to how the landscaping is on the north side.
Yeah, I actually have it as well, if you guys can see that. Yeah, so if you look at the north side, there will be numerous evergreen trees to buffer the pathway from the vacuums, as well as a significant amount of native grass, and then another set of evergreen trees just to the north of the vacuums that will also add to the buffering for people on the pathway, to give them a little more nature, I guess, as they're walking down the path.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. So while you have this pulled up, can you step us through, again, the traffic flow of cars coming in, cars going out, and relate that to pedestrians and anybody using the sidewalks that are going past your property?
Certainly, Chair Shernick. May I also be able to call up Aaron Green, my car wash consultant, to help answer that?
Absolutely,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Aaron Green, Focus Car Wash Solutions. To address a couple of things, I don't know where I can, there we go. Yeah. Traffic can come in from the south here or from Hover Road and proceed east and then enter. There is an escape lane. We also made this lane wider for through access to the property to the east that is not being developed. The current approved PUD plan for the Hover crossing shows pedestrian traffic on actually outside of our property, connecting to the bike paths and anything along the north. So we are going to provide connections. If you see this walkway here, we've proposed, I think, Ava, to temporarily provide a connection to that north until the rest of it is developed and can follow the approved plan. We'll provide that connection to the north bike path and walking path. Does that answer all of your pedestrian questions?
Not quite. On the
Okay.
on the west side of the property, it looks like there's a sidewalk that's curving. Seems as though there's an indication of some zebra stripes to get to the building itself, but I would assume it would also be striped across the drive lane. So also one question which was raised during our public hearing was the quantity of traffic. Do you have any studies as to what you expect the number of cars coming in and out, how that might compare to what other uses would be, other uses that because I believe in the PUD, in our packet it said the previous plan was like a restaurant or, Ava's shaking her head, yes. So how would traffic compare to that restaurant usage?
You know, I think that would vary depending on the size of the restaurant that could be built. It's an 1.5 acre lot. I think I'm not a restaurant consultant, so, you know, I don't know how many tables you could fit in the size of a building, but an 1.5 acre lot seems rather large to me. The car wash is capable of producing traffic flow of around 150 cars an hour, which is significantly different than what you're used to seeing in town. There was someone alluded to cars backing up into the street. The belt conveyor and the way that this is laid out allows traffic to continuously flow. So we don't anticipate things like a restaurant where there will be stopping and long periods of parking, right? This is a turnover facility, so we'll be able to process and not inhibit traffic flow inside of the rest of the center or back out into Hover Crossing. We have 3 lanes of pay, so that means we can stack significantly more cars than you're used to seeing around town at other facilities. You know, we'll be able to fit almost 30 cars inside of those pay lanes. So we'll be able to handle any traffic that we anticipate coming through without encroaching upon the development or onto Hover.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions? Comments, concerns? Commissioner Levison.
Once the facility is built, will there be any monitoring at all of the noise levels? Say, for example, you know, something goes haywire. Is this a one and done situation as far as monitoring? And is there going to be someone's going to check to make sure the same model number is being put in?
So, Chair Shernick and Commissioner Levison, typically the standard protocol with the car washes is, you know, we do the acoustic analysis, they do whatever mitigation they're required to do, and then the city's response is more on a reactive. So if we were to get noise complaints from neighbors, we would certainly send our code enforcement officers out there to do it with their noise monitors. But it's more of a reactive. Typically, we just don't have resources to go and monitor the noise levels at various businesses.
Thank you, Ava. Anybody else? Anybody in the mood to make a motion? Ava, just to clarify, a car wash is a permitted, it's an allowed use within this development, right?
Yes, Chair Shernick. The zoning is PUD mixed use. The PUD mixed use zoning allows for a multitude of uses in the code. A variety of it could be residential. Anything that's allowed in residential, commercial zones is allowed in the mixed use with approval of a preliminary PUD plan from Planning Commission.
Thank you. Commissioner Tesloff.
I guess I would just like to say, being a commercial area, I mean, commercial uses are going to happen, and if a car wash is going to happen, having it oriented the way it is, so stacking is away from the road and parking is away from the road and pretty well landscaped. I feel like this not only meets the criteria, it's about the best possible situation for a car wash on this lot. So I'm definitely in support of it.
Commissioner Poland.
In looking through and going through our criteria for evaluation, and I'm not going to go through each one individually, but in going through those, it appears that this meets all those criteria that are listed. Based on that, what I would like to do then is to approve PZR 2018B with the one condition that the applicant shall satisfy all requirements of the DRC prior to final approval of the PUD.
Just to clarify, you're making a motion to approve that, and it's PZR 2017 or
2018
2018-7B. Okay, all right. So we have a motion on the floor to approve PZR 2018-7B. Commissioner Teta.
Quick question for Ava before we vote on the motion. The applicant talked about wanting to be open until 8. Is that our purview? Is it you guys? Should we be discussing that? What do you think?
Yes, Commissioner Teta, good question and good catch. Yes, so when they submitted their application, those were the hours that were given, and those are the hours that they put on the cover page of their PUD plan. So if that's their request tonight, is to go to 8 o'clock or 7 a.m. to 8 o'clock instead of 7:30, you can certainly approve that, and I guess, I don't know, Don, we just add a condition it's not really a condition, but I guess you're stating that you're approving it with those hours of operation, and then when we go through the final PUD with our staff and getting it approved, we can then allow it to be changed on the cover page.
Commissioner Poland.
Ava, if we don't approve it here, what is the process for them to come to you to ask for additional hours? Or I assume that there's a process in that companies must come to us occasionally from time to time to ask for changing of hours.
Yes, Chair Shernick, Commissioner Pollan. So, yeah, I mean, sometimes a project will get approved, and after the fact and after it's built, they'll ask for amendments. Minor amendments, staff does approve. We have to kick them around, though, and think about what's minor. You know, we don't just do it on the fly. And so, you know, at this point, I think they're requesting it now. So that's within your purview to approve it now. Or if you don't approve it, I don't know. I mean, they could come back after it's built and ask staff, and we would kick it around. But since we've now brought it out in this open meeting, and if it were not approved by you tonight because you felt that was an inappropriate time, then that's something we would consider as staff and say, well, we wouldn't administratively approve that if the Planning Commission felt it was inappropriate. You'd have to go back and ask them.
Okay, so before I go ahead and make the change, I'm just wondering if there are any consensus on this. I mean, it looks like they're just going a half hour earlier, a half hour later. I personally don't see a big deal about that. As long as nobody has any concerns, what I would like to do then is probably, I think the appropriate thing to do would be a second condition that we also allow the hours to be from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay, so you've not yet modified your motion.
I will modify my motion and add that as of now because I'm not seeing any head nods saying that they are in too big of a disagreement, maybe one head nod, but I will go ahead and add that as my second condition.
So there would be a second condition to your motion, which would have the hours be
exactly
as requested, 7
Correct.
to 8. Okay, Commissioner Levison.
I guess I'm just curious if the hours go to 8 o'clock and there are 5 cars stacked and waiting, do those 5 cars go through? And I mean, it could be that we have one nice day in March and it's been snowing like crazy and everyone's car is dirty. So at 8 o'clock, we've got 5 cars stacked up. And then, you know, people might want to continue to vacuum. So the question is, how is the what's the business process of closing things down. I'm not just thinking about the noise, but also the workers, where some people, you know, may need to get somewhere. And also, frankly, we've had some incidents around the Greenway, and that bridge around there does get tagged frequently at night, and so I would be also concerned for your workers that the later it gets, where they have an extra half an hour to tie up, maybe it'll be almost 9 o'clock, so.
Thanks for your question, Commissioner Levison. I'll let Aaron, who's operated car washes in the past for 11 years, to talk to that.
Historically, the reason for the request, the hour still may be 7:30, but it would give us that allotment of time that should something come up, that we have that 30-minute grace period to address anything that had come up. March and the winter time is historically the busiest time, and simply winter conditions, the temperature and daylight hours are shortened, which would prevent us from probably going to 8 o'clock anyway in the winter time. This is more of a summer thing, but we're still considering the 7:30, but we wanted a buffer time in case there was some cars in line. And then during the summertime, it's still daylight during those hours.
Okay. Commissioner Kohler.
I agree with Commissioner Poland. I don't see any issue. Seems like a couple of the issues that were brought up by the landowners aren't going to be changed significantly if it's open till 7:30 or 8, so I would be in support of that.
Commissioner Tetzlaff.
I would agree with the 8 o'clock as well. I mean, they're still closing before a lot of businesses who have workers who work much later hours, and so I don't see a problem with 7 a.m. to 8.
Okay, I'm going to chime in and second the motion because we don't have a second yet on it. So I will second the motion, and of course that includes the second condition of the change in time. Any further discussion before we take a vote? Seeing none, let's take a vote. Okay, that passed unanimously in favor. And let me find my statement I need to read. This item now enters a 7-day appeal period. During this time, any aggrieved party may appeal the Commission's decision by submitting a written appeal letter stating why the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision should be amended or reversed by City Council. All appeals must be in writing and must be received in the City Clerk's office and the Planning Office within the 7-day appeal period, which begins Thursday, June 21 at 8 a.m. and ends Wednesday, June 27 at 5 p.m. Thank you to the walkers for their presentation and to their consultant, Mr. Green. Thank you, Ava, for helping us through that. Let's see. Yeah, I think we have enough time before we take a break. I'm shooting for a break around 8:30 or so. So I think we'll get into the next item on the agenda, but we'll probably stop at some point midway. So let's go to item number 8 on the agenda, which is the North Star preliminary subdivision plat.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ava Pahajewski. This is the North Star preliminary subdivision plat. Uh-oh, sorry, hang on. Okay. So again, we'll just go back to the project location. Again, this is in the southwest area of Longmont, one of the last undeveloped residential areas. It's west of the Somerset Filing 5 subdivision that's currently under construction, east of the Portico subdivision in Boulder County, and then south of Renaissance, Clover Basin Ranch, Battleview Estates, all of those. So it's just east of Mount Audubon Drive, and it's north of Plateau Road, and then there are agriculturally zoned residential properties on the south end of Plateau Road. So this property was annexed in 2014. It was zoned R1. The land use designation is single-family neighborhood. The maximum density in R1 is 5 dwelling units per acre. This site's 40 acres. They're allowed 200, but they're proposing 64. The minimum lot size in the R1 zone is 5,500 square feet and 60 foot wide, and the proposed subdivision plat meets those standards. So again, this is a proposal for 64 lots as well as a almost 5 acre, my mouse can't get over there, but there we go. 5 acre park dedication over here, which was part of the annexation agreement. Then they have some pocket parks up on the north and up on the south end as well. They've got larger lots on the south end adjacent to Plateau Road, and then an open space buffer adjacent to Plateau Road. And so they have a conservation easement with Boulder County, and so the project meets all of the requirements in that there has to be the open space buffer on the south, and that they need larger lots here east of these Boulder County properties. So we have the species and habitat report in your packet. There are prairie dogs, and so they will have to meet the standards of the species and habitat ordinance, and that's a condition that we put in the packet. As far as street intersection, the DRC asked for some more curvature going down Heather Hill, going toward from Mount Audubon to Heather Hill. That's a condition. There's an abandoned, Captain abandoned oil well. The project meets the standard in that there are no buildings within 150 feet. And again, there's that conservation with Boulder County, and it meets all of the requirements in that conservation easement. We've had the neighborhood meeting. We sent out the notices as well, and everything's in your packet. We did get some more emails this morning, and those are up on the dais. And so staff is recommending conditional approval, again, with the DRC's recommendations on the road, that they meet the prairie dog standards, and that they do the burrowing owl and migratory bird study before construction. Chad Kipfer is here from Markel Homes to make a presentation as well.
Thank you, Ava. Let's hear from Mr. Kipfer.
Hello, I'm Chad Kipfer, 5723 Arapahoe Avenue in Boulder, with Ridgeline Development Corporation and Markel Homes. So Markel Homes, we're a recognized brand name. We're a certified Energy Star builder for all of our homes, and that's our website there if you wanted to take a look at some of our projects. We've done North End, which is in Louisville, projects in Lyons, Niwot, Dakota Ridge and Boulder, Calumet 38, and then West Grange, which we're currently working on the second phase of that at Nelson and 75th in town. Just kind of going through some of the same items again. So I just wanted to show the black dash line is obviously the city boundary. North Star is this project right here. Zoning map, 5 DU per acre. We're at 1.6. And then kind of just another aerial showing. So Mount Audubon Drive is coming in. There'll be a connection at this location. This property, I called it, that was the call annexation, but that's the site development is right there, and I think Dreamfinders is building homes in there. And then this side of the Somerset is been completed up to the boundary of the property right now. Then there is a trail connection that comes down this way, as well as making kind of a ditch lateral connection that runs down through there. This project, I've been working on this for a number of years. So when we annexed, this property had, a portion of it had a conservation easement on it, and we had an agreement with Boulder County to remove that, and the concept plan that was approved through annexation reflects the Boulder County approval. They had a few conditions, so I'm just showing these with the black line around it. These are 3/4 acre minimum lots that meet. This is the concept plan of what I'm showing, the annexation one. And then this kind of blue line, basically right here were 4 outlots called 1, 6, 7, and 8 that were on the concept plan. On the proposed plan that we have right now, that's called outlot A. And the conservation easement that was on a portion of this property is moving over to these pieces. And then here's the 4.7 acre land dedication site for the park. So this is our development plan. It aligns with the concept plan. There's these lots along the west and the south are 3/4 acre. The conservation easement gets located into this buffer area along the Boulder County sides. The park dedication is the same, 64 single-family lots and a pocket park. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Let's see, I guess the other thing on, I know there's been some communication on prairie dogs. I am aware that there are some on the northern part of the site. We've been working with our consultant ERO, who's gone through the process of notifying for relocation sites for their recommendation for here is we haven't been able to find a relocation site. We have reached out to one of the groups that's in town, and they don't have a current site. They said that they may. As a part of that process, if you were to move it, a property owner would need to, give their approval. Adjacent property owners would need to give their approval, and we've requested that information from them and haven't received it. The request that we got from them, if they weren't able to find a site, is that use like a carbon monoxide fumigation for prairie dogs. Not familiar with it, but that was their process, and they said that the city had preferred that. I'm not sure, and my consultant wasn't, had heard of that, but they haven't used that as well. And so that's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Just to clarify real fast, the pocket park down in the southwest corner, you've got a circle delineated. That's the diameter around the wellhead, correct?
So it's the wellhead, it came up when we were coming through the process that looking at historic aerial photographs, that there was a possible wellhead that was on the site. There was no evidence of that. We went out with metal detectors, found it. From the records, that was capped in the 50s. Then somebody made it into a water well. And then I worked with A.G. Wassenauer, my geotechnical engineer, and their recommendation, to cap it, fill it. And we've completed that work already, and I provided the documentation for that to city staff. But that is the actual wellhead itself is in the outlot. And then part of what we were doing is just providing, more native landscape, up to a 3-rail open rail fence, so that there's some a buffer between that, even though there's no hazard with it. It's just the city standard.
Thank you, Mr. Kipfer. Commissioner Tetzlaff.
My question might be more for staff here. So in Resolution B, it mentions that the applicant provide good faith efforts at relocating the existing dogs to satisfaction of city staff. Reading through the natural resource assessment, it does look like the applicant or the study has reached out to multiple agencies, and as the applicant stated, nobody's really available, and the assessment itself actually recommends upon extermination or whatever, donating the prairie dogs as food and that sort of thing. So my question goes back to the resolution and what is considered satisfaction of city staff?
Chair Shernick and Commissioner Tetzlaff, good question. They did make the good faith efforts. However, we do have the local group, the Prairie Protection Group, and though their consultant has said that they have not responded back, we would like to give them some more time and some more chances to try and help find a relocation. So in working with Markel Homes, we were going to have their consultant reach out once more before we fully accept the suggestions and recommendations in the report.
And do you have an estimated time that we're willing to wait? Because I wouldn't want to make them wait for like 2 years and then nothing happens. And so is there something, like, do we have a time that staff generally considers to be an appropriate amount?
Yes, I think we were talking about it the other day, Don, right? We were saying we were going to give them another opportunity to help find a relocation site, and we this time, instead of leaving an open-ended email with, hey, do you have a relocation site? And then not hearing back from them, we'll give them maybe 2, maybe 3 weeks if we're, we've got the time. Give them a deadline to respond back to the consultant to say if they do or they don't have a relocation site.
Just 2 to 3 weeks sounds okay to you guys? Just in terms of hearing back from these guys if there's a relocation site?
Commissioner Poland.
Mr. Kiffer, I do have a question on that same assessment. It brings a question. On page 2 by the bottom, it says, let me find it here. It was talking about the prairie dog and the fact that the holes were covered up, and that was in 2017. However, the prairie dogs have been removed and their holes filled at the time of the 2017 site visit. But then I understand also that there was a further visit in December of 2017 and the visit in 2018. I'm just trying to get a clarification. Who filled the holes? Were the holes actually, I just so I can understand the history of the prairie dogs there. Were they there? Did somebody fill the holes? Did they come back? That one statement seems to make that somebody filled the holes in. Were it all the holes? Some of the holes? Do we know who filled it in?
We've been working on this project for a bunch of years, and it's part of owning the project. There has been, trying to control some of the population that is there. But I know that right now there's about 50 prairie dogs. They're kind of located on the northern part of the site. The development to the north and to the east, are both installed, with all their lots. And if there were dogs that might have been on that, they probably migrated, onto this project, is my feeling on that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, this is a public hearing item, so I'm going to open the public hearing for this. Nobody has signed up, but if somebody would like to come forward to speak to the commission, please come forward, state your name and address. Yes, sir, come on down. And you get 5 minutes. I'd love to hear from you.
Sorry, I didn't notice the sign-up sheet. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Steve Zabo. I live on 8449 North 79th Street, Longmont, Colorado, USA, Earth. My property is on the southwest corner there. I have the 50-acre farm across. So I have no problem with this project at all. The only thing I question is the water rights. I'm assuming that the city is going to pick up the water rights on this. I'm guessing it's about 60 shares. Is that right? Okay. And I'm a member of the Holland Ditch and Left-Hand Ditch. If you could bring up a closer map that I could show you where the laterals run. I'm just concerned about the lateral that runs down on the north side of Plateau Road. That'll go to the city. Right now, it's carrying water through it. I'm not sure what's being irrigated right now. But if that gets blocked up, then some of the other ditches in the back might need to be dug a little bit deeper to carry water. So that's the only concern I have. On the west side going up Mount Audubon Road, the ditch is on the west side of that road and then cuts over just north of that green area there, so that shouldn't be an issue. And on the south side of Plateau Road, there's a lateral ditch that runs there. That's the one that might have to be dug out a little bit deeper. So I just didn't know what the city's plan was. Were they gonna maintain the ditch on that side, or what they're gonna do?
Anything else, Mr. Zabo?
No,
Zabo?
but
Okay.
do you know what they're gonna do?
Don't know. We'll
Okay.
ask the question.
You're gonna keep me posted, right?
Yes, we will.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. Bye.
Thank you very much. Anybody else who would like to come forward?
My name's Leslie Ewey, and I live south of the project on North 79th Street, across the street from Steve. And I was wondering about hours of construction and construction traffic. What are the hours planned? I was under the impression earlier that there were, because something like 7 to 7 for construction hours, but it certainly, those are exceeded to the current construction that's being done. So if you staff or the developers could answer that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir, you wanted to come down and say something?
My name is Chad Tracy. I live at 7903 Plateau Road, Longmont, Colorado, right here in this property. Right here. And I have a few concerns right now. First one is this pathway right here. Basically, right now, this pathway has created a walkway for people in all these neighborhoods, and they come down this private driveway here. And it's become a big problem for me. So I don't know if I can, if this part of the road right here exists, if we can eliminate that part of the road there, then the traffic would, no one would be able to come through this way, because people still drive through here. And now that Google Maps is bringing construction traffic down this road right here on Plateau Road. So I'm getting semi trucks delivering that are trying to get to Summerlin over here and different places. So I'm constantly getting this roadway blocked up where I can't even get to my house. So that's one of the main issues that I have. When they started this development over here, they basically brought all their equipment down my road, and I have to maintain this road. So I grade this road. My neighbor and I, we have a tractor, and we grade this road all the way down to the corner here. And now that the city of Longmont is going to pick up this section, will they be responsible for grading the road there or maintaining that part of the road? And that's where Steve was talking about this farmer's ditch, this corner section right here. There's a three-way. It basically, the water comes off this property here, and that gets irrigated probably 3 or 4 times a year, and it pushes the water this way, and all the way down here. And then all the way down here, this is the end of the ditch. So somehow it'll have to stop there. The other issue that I have, I didn't know about this pocket park. This is something new to me in the wellhead. You know, that's kind of a concern that I've just from watching right now. One of the last things, I guess, is there's owls that live down in here. The wildlife, you know, we have all these cottonwood trees, and they're going to be on the city of Longmont, and there's a nest of owls that have lived here for longer than I've lived there. And they feed on all those prairie dogs back here. And they've already come over and put paper and poisoned them once, because I sat out and watched them do it all day long. And they were gone for probably a month, and then they came back. And my concern is, you know, the owls, the great horned owls that live here, the hawks that live over here in these trees are all feeding off that after they poisoned them. And, you know, we never heard anything. They do leak onto my property, but, you know, I got dogs, so they kind of keep them off the property now, but they sit right in here most of the time. And that's just a major concern about relocating them. So the pathway is one of the major concerns. I'm getting a lot of traffic, walking traffic, construction traffic along the road and everything. And then this pocket park, I didn't know anything about. And then the ditch rights too, because in the future I'm gonna, you know, I'm getting water down here now. I've been cleaning all this up over the past 5 years, the ditch. And a major problem is this corner right here. There's so much vegetation here, and nobody lives here anymore. It's just a vacant house. One of the big cottonwood trees right here fell down over the road and was blocked. And so I couldn't even get out of my house, you know, until they got it removed, and they did it promptly, but it was just confusing on who owns the property. You know, it's going to the city of Longmont here, and right now it's part of Boulder County. So, you know, that's one of my major concerns is now I'm going to be dealing with the city of Longmont on that corner, maintaining all that stuff. So, all right, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is John Reber. I live at 8558 North 79th Street. I'll just show you on it's this property right here, if you can see it. It technically, I guess, is what will be south of lot number, is that 14 or? Anyway, this lot right here, we will be south of that. And that's the current location of what was the old Roberts property. I've lived on that property for 30 years at this point. I'm speaking tonight primarily about site work, how the site is developed. I've been working on reviewing this proposal and working on it over the years, as I did with Somerset years ago. Working with Somerset, the city council, and also the city planning, we were able to gain some slightly larger lots on that north side of my property, and then also a landscape buffer, which, as you know, is being proposed in a similar way along the North Star property. In the case of North Star, they have much larger lots, and we're appreciative of that, and I think that'll work out. In the proposal, the applicant wants to remove all of the trees on the lot, if I read the proposal correctly. I think there's 78. They're going to replace them with 96. Actually, you can imagine they're much smaller trees. There's quite a collection of cottonwood trees in this corner here at Plateau, Mount Audubon, 79th. Some of them are dead. Some of them are damaged, dying, and a few of them have potential for saving. And I would just say that there is one tree, particularly south of what is the proposed lot 12. That's a tree that has had a red-tailed nest in it the previous 2 years, but not this year. The wind has blown them out frequently, but they have been successful. So saving that tree might be a possibility to save some wildlife in the area. The previous speaker also mentioned the great horned owls that apparently was missed by the applicant's consultant. They have also been there for more than 25 years. Obviously, they're not the same birds, but they have successfully fledged young for 25 years there. They're there right now, in spite of some of the movements around in that area. The young are still flying in that area. What I would like to propose or have the commission look at is establishing windows of time that the construction, including perhaps tree removal and the demolition of the home, to at least leave the time frame clear when the birds are nesting and fledging their young. That would perhaps fight the timing that is being proposed for the prairie dogs, but we're looking at the end of December, early January, through perhaps May. And I have photographs timing the birds are there during that time and would be subject to disturbance. After May, likely the birds can fly off. They're there right now, but they would fly off and would be able to handle themselves. If the red-tailed hawk returns before the developer moves on the trees or anything, I think they ought to look at a window of leaving time for that, for those birds to get off the nest also. There are a couple of really good examples around Longmont over the years, several Pratt developments along 119, and there's also a good development west of King Soopers on Hover, where they actively saved large old cottonwoods. Now, eventually they die, they need trimming, they need care, but those developers saw a chance to maintain a tree that had great aesthetics, possible wildlife. Great horned owls will live right next door to you. They'd come back or they would stay there. So I would like you to perhaps consider that. I think particularly one of those trees is in the outlot already, south of lot 12. That might be an easy one to save. However, the irrigation water was pulled off 4 years ago. The trees are pretty stressed. My irrigation water that runs on the south side of Plateau Road, the north side of my property, I irrigate 5 acres as my neighbor does. Our water actually helps water at least that one tree. Thank you for your time, and I do have a set of comments that I will give to the commission and also to the applicants. Again, I'm not speaking against the development, but just looking at some options for the trees and the time frame for the wildlife.
Thank you, Mr. Raver.
Thank you.
Anybody else who would like to come forward and speak? Okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. We'll go back to discussion amongst the commission. Okay, I'm sure we'll have some questions here. Ava, let's start with Mr. Zabo's questions about water. How is water being dealt with for this development? Water rights, the ditches. He and Mr. Tracy also mentioned whether those ditches, who's going to maintain them. There seems to be a lot of gray areas here, if you can enlighten us.
Sure, Chairman Chernick. So when a property is annexed, before we will record the annexation ordinance, they have to turn over all their water shares. And so since it was recorded, I presume Don got those. And so that's taken care of. Now, there's two different things. There's the water shares that come in at annexation. And then when you final plat a property, if there are any raw water deficits, which is, I don't know what the rate is currently, but it's like $14,000 per acre foot, or I could be wrong, but it's something in the thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. And that has to be satisfied if there are any raw water deficits at time of final plat. So not at this point, but if this plat was approved tonight, they would have to come back for a final plat approval and public improvement plans for the street network and utilities. And at that point, any raw water deficits would have to be settled up with the water department before we would record a final plat. So that's the water. I did send Holland Ditch a referral letter when we received the application, and they had no comments for us. So I don't know what to take with that, but I did tell our water staff, and they gave me the contact info for Holland Ditch. So they were notified. They just did not give us any comments.
Okay, so maintenance of the ditches basically goes back to the Holland Ditch Company, or how, I mean?
It's my understanding it's a private ditch. Do you have some thoughts, Don?
Chairman Chernak, members of the commission. So what Ava described is correct. But typically what happens is during the final plat and the public improvement approval, when Public Works is reviewing all the construction plans for the subdivision, if there's any changes that are proposed to any of the existing irrigation facilities, the applicant has to negotiate an agreement with the ditch company before they can change or modify their ditch. At that time, that's when any obligations related to maintenance or how it's going to be constructed are negotiated between those parties. Sometimes the ditches themselves, I don't believe this one is, but typically because the city gets all of the water rights at development, we become a primary owner, and therefore we end up with obligations as an owner. And then as the city, potentially, if we approve development that impacts the ditch, sometimes we will take over maintenance and repairs for those ditches just because we have an interest in them at that time. In other times, which I don't foresee at this point, is that if the water conveyance system for a portion of the ditch is not needed because there's no one downstream, then oftentimes those are abandoned with the approval of the people that have the ditch company to confirm. But the details that we're talking about tonight are typically going to be worked out between the applicant, the ditch company, and then typically the city is going to review that to make sure that we understand if we're getting any obligations for maintenance.
Okay, and thank you, Don, and just help me understand, because I'm not very familiar with ditches. I've always been a city boy. So how does what you just told us, does it vary in terms of laterals? Mr. Zabo and Mr. Tracy were talking about laterals, and are those different?
So, again, my understanding, unfortunately, we don't have anybody from Public Works here tonight who could probably answer this a lot more concise than I can, is that if there are any irrigation ditches, laterals, or any conveyance of any water for any ditch company or for people, private ditches, and an example is that the Doe Chef Dairy over at County Line and 17th, where the apartments are being built south of Jim Ham Pond, that was a private lateral. They had to go and get approvals from Mr. Doe Chef before they could touch his private ditch that conveyed water to his property. They had to build it to his standards so that it would function. I believe he got rid of some maintenance obligations that he had. They had to accept those in order to do their development. That's the same expectation that I would foresee with this. Again, I don't get involved. Our staff doesn't get involved with that negotiation. It's a discussion and a negotiation between the developer and the owners of those irrigation laterals.
Okay. So talking infrastructure, let's move on to the roads. Mr. Tracy made it very clear that that is a private road that is between Plateau and where Mount Audubon ends, and that he's responsible for maintaining it. And there was also a letter in our packet, I believe, from somebody mentioning the same thing, that they were having a lot of problems with people disrespecting the access to that road and causing maintenance issues on that road. So what are we looking at in terms of and can you clarify again for me on the image we have in front of us, what will actually be city road, paved, what is maintained by the city, what's not maintained by the city, et cetera?
Yes, Chair Chernick, I'm happy to. So this little segment here of Mount Audubon would be city right-of-way. City would be, when it's constructed, it would be turned over to the city after construction acceptance, and the city would maintain it. As well as up here, again, Mount Audubon dead ends at Heather Hill Street and then comes around. So again, that's city right-of-way. And then all of these internal streets inside the subdivision would be city right-of-way that would be owned and maintained by the city. This is going to be, like, as Chad mentioned, a trail connection, a pedestrian trail connection. Ideally, the trail connection leads you back into the North Star subdivision, because I mean, I don't know why anyone would want to come up to these are private homes here. So ideally, the plan is to connect the pedestrians back into the North Star subdivision. So those would be public streets.
So I got the impression from Mr. Tracy that people are driving down Mount Audubon, going on his private drive section of it in order to get to the intersection of Plateau and Mount Audubon in order to then park and then to take the trail, or something like that. That they're basically using his property or his drive as a shortcut. Yeah, go ahead, Ava. How do we help him out here?
So at this point, if you've been out there recently, and I know that on one of my certificate of property postings, there's a picture of it, but there's a big gate here that says road closed, no access. So Mount Audubon dead ends right here at their property. So maybe it's a little bit higher, and it'll come down. But so I don't know how. I guess they could go around it. I suppose there's not a no trespassing sign. So I don't know how vehicles would get down the road with the road block right there. But coming up from Plateau, I guess potentially, I know I can say that when we go through final plat and public improvement plans, they will have to have a pre-construction meeting with our public works staff. And at that time, they set the hours and days of construction, and those are enforced by city staff inspectors. So if there is an issue with Somerset Meadows construction trucks, the homeowners can absolutely reach out to us, because they shouldn't be coming up Mount Audubon. They should be following whatever construction route is in the Somerset Meadows construction plan. And so I don't know of any other traffic that would be coming up here. All I know is Plateau Road, there is access coming north. I know that there's a road closed sign up here that makes you unable to get a vehicle down from Mount Audubon.
Okay, thank you, Ava. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Commissioner Levison.
Thank you, Chairman Shurek. I had a question about the park dedication site. I read something in the packet that indicated that if the city, there will be a dedication, however, if the city doesn't develop the park site, then it would be reverted back to being developable sites. So can you explain that a little bit, Ava?
So Chair Shernick and Commissioner Levison, I believe you're talking about things that are in the comprehensive plan, unless you're talking about in the North Star annexation agreement. I do know that since the time that this was annexed, we did some changes with the Somerset Meadows subdivision. Some of you who've been here a long time may recall there was a 16-acre park up here at one point on the part of this property, part of the property north of it, and part of Somerset Meadows. As part of a negotiation agreement, the city removed the park land use designation off of Somerset Meadows. They made a payment of $800,000 to pay for construction and some maintenance of the park. And so at this point, I think Somerset Meadows is ready for the park. This property up north has already dedicated their piece. We're waiting for this project to come in and dedicate this piece to the city. And we already have the money in from KB Homes to go ahead. And I know that they email me at least once a month asking, when are we going to design it? So I don't see at this point, Commissioner Levison, that the park wouldn't be constructed.
Commissioner Flagg.
Thank you. I think this is a question for first staff and then I guess developer. Ava, what kind of existing trees will remain on the site after they take down the ones that look like they're not in good shape?
Commissioner Flagg, the tree preservation plan, which is on sheet L9 in your packet, shows that they're all coming down. Most of them are unhealthy. So they will either have to replace or pay a cash in lieu fee.
So we have identified that there is some wildlife that obviously uses nests in cottonwood trees. Is there a possibility that the city would contemplate allowing replanting of such species trees as cottonwoods, and under what conditions, say for example in that smaller park there near the nesting areas?
Commissioner Flagg, I suppose you could make that a condition if you want to check in with the applicant. At this point, they do have some species on their plan there. I don't recall if they're cottonwoods. I can go check, but you can certainly condition that.
Yeah, I didn't see anything listed of that nature, and my understanding is there are at least 3 cottonwoods that the city would contemplate planting. Just wondering, but the applicant, I guess, need to ask that person what the thought would be on that. Thank you.
I guess part of it, so most of the, so down here where most of the cottonwood trees are in the right-of-way, the future right-of-way from Mount Audubon. I know that our planner met with the city forester and looked at that on terms of the recommendations that, you know, that were in there. I mean, we could certainly explore planting a cottonwood tree in there. I mean, we're looking at planting, you know, obviously those trees have been there for a long time, and they're probably not going to be there 100 years from now or 20 years from now. So when the neighborhood comes up, we're obviously going to be planting trees that are going to grow. They're younger, and, you know, will establish through there. But we can certainly look at that and see if that's a good, you know, with our landscape architect, and see how that might work out. To plant a cottonwood tree, if that was the request.
Well, that's my concern, because you do have Outlot B area there that would not be on a right-of-way, and would hopefully be away enough from a house that, should a cottonwood go over, it will not damage a house. I mean, we don't want that kind of thing to happen. And obviously, the southern area there, along the southern boundary, isn't really big enough to support that kind of a tree, but replacing of a couple of them might be a good effort, because you do have wildlife in the area that would use it.
We could certainly explore it. I'm not opposed to that request. I mean, we're just, you know, if there's a older tree that's sick, unhealthy, or damaged,
Well, you
obviously
have to take
we
that
need
down.
to take that down, and especially in there. But we can certainly explore if there's a specific request on cottonwoods, you know, to see where we could plant one or two in there,
Thank
in
you.
that buffer.
Mr. Kiffer, I have a question for you.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Reber had mentioned potentially having a window of time during which you would not do work down in that corner in order to allow the birds that have nested there to fledge or to move on. Is that something that you would also be open to?
Well, we have to be open to that. There's a
Okay.
federal mandatory bird act that every development has to
Right. I forgot
abide
about
by,
that.
that has windows, and I believe that the report that I have has those same windows, you know, that are in there. And the West Grange project, just jumping around, that's on Nelson and 75th, that project had a great horned owl on it, an osprey nest, black or red-winged blackbirds in some of the ditches, and we maintained all of those buffers worked, you know, within the Migratory Bird Act. And Yarrow worked as a consultant and had people on site to make sure that they weren't disturbed while we went through it. So meeting the requirements of that act, I absolutely feel we can do that.
Okay, great. So it sounds like we've got those birds covered.
Yeah, I didn't go into the detail
Okay.
of it, but if
Yeah.
if you look up that act, and in there, I believe my report mentions those same windows.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay, great. Commissioner Kohler.
Sorry, I have some more bird questions.
Sure.
So actually, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act right now is being interpreted that you could cut down, and you can do anything to a bird as long as you don't have the intent of killing it. So my question is to Ava, if the city has timing restrictions, if the developer chose to interpret the current definition on the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and it's possible that that opinion came out after Yarrow's report. So and a lot of developers are taking that stance right now, that they feel like they can cut down trees. So I would just wonder, I guess, if the company's decision changes before construction, if the city has any way to protect the birds. And then I also had a question with Commissioner Flake's comment about the cottonwoods. You know, it could, even if you planted a cottonwood, it could be 20 years before it's big enough to hold any kind of nest. If you would be open to maybe some kind of nesting platform, I think they've done that on other developments to replace some of the other structures or the other trees that are being cut down that currently hold the nest.
I guess a two-part question. So the birds, I mean, I'm not an expert on that piece of it, but I know that on the West Grange project, basically what we had to do is, and I believe that's kind of what we're having in here, is that when it becomes time and it's not within, when it becomes time to do our work and we have our public improvement plans ready to go, we send the consultants out and they verify that there aren't any nesting birds that are in the trees or you know, that are out there, and that it's within those same windows. And usually there aren't any nesting birds, you know, the migratory birds that are within the windows that you can take down the trees. But, you know, we're not trying to have a loophole, you know, to take them down. So it would be to have them come out, take a look if there's a hawk or there's an owl or there's some kind of nesting bird, then obviously we would, wait until they left, or that window for the removal, for that act.
So you plan on abiding by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act and not cutting down trees with active bird nests in them?
Yeah, that would be in violation of the act.
It wouldn't actually right now.
Well,
It wouldn't.
I mean, I'm not here to have a disagreement. I'm trying to say that I'd like to follow the act because that's what I'm trying to do. I guess the other question on the cottonwoods, I guess, were you asking if to leave one up, or I guess I wasn't understanding that.
No, I was just stressing the idea that you might plant cottonwoods, that they wouldn't provide habitat for a nest. The size, a red-tailed hawk needs a significant size tree.
Sure.
So it would take years and years before that cottonwood got big enough to support a nest. If in the meantime you would be open to nesting platforms to support those in the in-between time.
We can certainly talk to the city and I guess I don't know if it's even a good idea to recommend one that's in there, but we can certainly work with city staff and see what their recommendations are, for that area, if there's other implications for that. I don't know what that means, but I'm open for the discussion. If that's
Commissioner Levison.
My question involves the capped well. I noticed that the notice was sent to the mineral rights owners. So sometime in the future, though, there could be a new technology that you could draw out even more oil or gas out of something that was considered totally dead. I mean, the technology is always changing, and previous wells that were considered dry in the past, there have been new ways to extract additional mineral resources. I see this as a potential conflict because it might be in the future we haven't heard from the mineral rights owners, and they could come in and say, well, we want to assert our mineral rights, and then we have a tremendous conflict to resolve where we have very expensive homes, and a lot of people will ask, why hadn't we thought about this? And I just want to make sure that, is there a possibility that your development could acquire those mineral rights? If they're totally valueless, you might pick them up for $1. And that would give peace of mind to all those potential homeowners, and would give peace of mind to the community as well, to know that you have both the surface rights and the subsurface rights.
Was that a question or the comment? I guess on that, I don't believe that the severed mineral rights, I mean, we own some of them that are on there. I can't imagine that in that little spot that's there, that once this is plotted and the houses that are in there, that I don't know what the city's regulations on setbacks and access is of that would fit within any other parameters. But I don't know how to answer that one, other than I don't feel like once we're coming up that anyone's going to go in there and put a well in around. I don't know how they would access it.
Right. So let me phrase a question to Ava, following on Commissioner Levison's point. Thank you, Mr. Kipfer. If there were a way that particular well site, if it was possible in the future that could become active again, what is the city's setback requirements if that were actually an active well?
Chair Shernick, I believe it's 750 feet, isn't it, Don? I know you're looking at the code right now. I'm not an expert on oil and gas, but I thought that state regulation was also 750.
And so if there are existing houses there that are within the city limits, and a mineral rights owner comes in and says, I want to, start producing out of this well and put an active wellhead there, I know this gets into a lot of our oil and gas stuff, but where are we at in terms of a request like that?
Well, I think they'd have to get a permit from COGA, and again,
Okay.
I believe there are state laws. I don't believe you can drill right adjacent to a property
Okay.
within 750 feet.
Chairman Chernak, I would like to read through the section before I really give you what I would say is a definite answer, but my recollection of the regulations is that we prohibit the drilling for oil and gas within any property that is zoned residential in the city of Longmont.
Okay.
This property is zoned R1, which is a residential zoning district. So that by itself would preclude them from being able to drill on the property. Could they directionally drill from Boulder County outside the city limits and into and under the city? Yes, they could. Now, one of the reasons that we have the 150-foot setback is a safety factor to make sure that if there were ever to be any gas buildup in any prior well that was capped, that if there were to be an explosion, that there were people kept far enough away and activities far enough away that hopefully we would not have anybody lose any life or damage to property. The other reason that we have that 150 feet is that we know that over time, anything that man has ever made breaks down. And so we have to accommodate the ability for a workover rig to get back into that site to be able to recap that and fix that if it's needed. So for example, over in Blue Vista, where we have development going down by the recreation center, we are reworking a neighborhood pocket park to accommodate the ability for us to get that 150-foot setback so that we can get a workover rig in there to be able to work that well site if it's needed in the future for safety. We're also doing the same thing down at Pike and Hover with the new apartments, the silo apartments that are going to go down there. Again, making sure that we have the ability to get a rig in there. Again, it's for making sure that the integrity of the well that exists today remains intact and can be repaired. Our specialist, who we've hired, the Public Works Natural Resources Department hired, Jason Elkins, who worked in the oil industry for a number of years and now works for us. He is confident that that 150 feet gives us the ability to get a rig in there to be able to work those over. This development provides the required setbacks. We believe we can get in there or have the ability to have someone come in there. So I think it's been addressed.
Thank you, Don. And that partly goes to a comment from Mr. Tracy about the location of that pocket park and finding that there. So that is purposeful in order to allow us access in the future if we ever need it then. Now, I believe Mr. Kipfer also mentioned that there would be a split rail fence along that setback line where that curved line of trees is, I believe. He's nodding his head yes. So that would help keep people from, they could always hop a split rail fence, but that would tend to keep people on the grassy part rather than the native grass part and away from the wellhead and away from Mr. Tracy's property. Commissioner Poland.
Thank you. Ava, one quick question about the 5 acres. It had been recommended or suggested by some of the existing neighbors that 5 acres could be used for a prairie dog colony, but it sounds to me that the city already had plans for that 5 acres to be incorporated with other surrounding property to make a bigger park. So any consideration of making that some kind of prairie dog colony isn't really in the cards.
Commissioner Poland, that's correct. That is in our comprehensive plan as a designated community park. It always was. It was larger. It got shrunk. But so that is definitely for the use and enjoyment of the residents in Southwest Longmont.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kipfer, one question for you, and this is going back to those cottonwood trees. Mr. Reber had suggested that there were a couple trees that could potentially be saved. Had you ever considered saving them? Is there a reason why they wouldn't be saved? Can you talk to that?
All the trees, I guess, like I was saying, that sorry, get my eyes here. down here in this right-of-way section,
Mhm.
we've certainly looked at it. When we walked through it, it looked like a number of them were dead, dying, really old. Then they were all in the right-of-way. If there was any, improvements that needed in there, they would need to go away. He had mentioned another tree that might be over in this area down here.
Yes.
I'm not aware of a large cottonwood tree over there, but, we can certainly take a look at it.
Okay.
Um,
And- And then Ava, he had also mentioned that there was a potential for a nest in that said tree. If a nest is found in that tree, that would mean that they wouldn't be able to take it down? How does that work?
Commissioner Pullen, not that they would never be able to take it down. So like I said, we still have a long ways to go. We still have to go through final plat, public improvement plan. And then when they get into construction, when all that's approved, at that point, before they can start grading work, we would tell them to have their consultant go out, depending on what time of year it is. And if it's in the window that we conditioned, then that's what, if it starts, I don't have it in front of me, but if it's in that window of time that we conditioned during the nesting season, they have to go out, and if they do find nesting, then they can't start grading in that area.
Thank you.
Ava, I'd like to go through the conditions that you've proposed in PZR 2018-8B. So number one, prior to recording of the final plat, applicant would redesign the intersection of Mount Audubon and Heather Hill Street. And we haven't even talked about that, but what we see in the drawing in front of us up on the monitors right now is what the city desires, right? But what the applicant provided, I understand, showed a T intersection instead. Is that correct?
Yeah, Chair Shernick. So when the annexation concept plan was approved, that was a roundabout. And then they submitted the preliminary plat to staff, and Public Works took another look at it with traffic, and they determined that wasn't necessary. So they said just have the traffic just directly go east on Heather Hill. I think there may have been some miscommunication. So when they resubmitted, they had made it a T-stop. Staff had wanted more of a curvature. I don't know if this design is exactly what staff had asked for, because they haven't resubmitted yet.
Okay.
And so they will go through that with final plat and public improvement plans.
Okay. And then number two was good faith efforts at relocating the prairie dogs, which Commissioner Tetzloff asked about, and I think we received your answer on. Number three is prior to construction, the applicant provides a burrowing owl and migratory bird nest study. If construction commences between March 15 and October 31. So it sounds like we've already discussed that. Any more details you want to add to any of our understanding of those conditions at all?
No, Chair. I know
Okay.
Mr. Reber had made a suggestion that we expand that window of time. And so that's obviously your prerogative if you'd like to tweak that condition, or if you'd like to say any construction needs the burrowing owl study at any time. It's up to you. But that's we lifted this from the environmental report from the consultant.
But the burrowing owls are, this condition says burrowing owls and migratory bird nest studies, so we're covered by the federal law, depending how it's interpreted. So, am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Flake.
Thank you. But Ava, we could also add a fourth condition that could be more specific, something along the lines of, along with the landscaping of Outlot A and the Pocket Park, there would be the planting of not less than 2 cottonwood trees of at least 2-inch caliper. That's real specific, I know, but an understanding fully that trees at planting are not going to be able to host bird nests right then, but at some point they will be able to. And so perhaps if we make it available, the birds stick around, they come back, and meanwhile they find other cottonwood trees. We don't know that either, but it would be not inappropriate to add that condition. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kohler.
I guess I might suggest adding to Commissioner Shelley's recommendation maybe or other appropriate mitigation in the event that for some reason the developer's not able to do that, that we could feel like, you know, the birds might have some other option out there, but leave that open-ended so that we, you know, if they had a better idea, it would be an option for them.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. As we go through this with the public improvement plans and in the landscape planning, we have a landscape consultant on our staff who reviews these, and so I would defer to him to see if the cottonwoods are appropriate in that location or any other conditions you have about structures or nesting structures.
Yeah, and you know, maybe that means a nesting structure on the property, or if that doesn't end up being appropriate because there's no prairie dogs left for them to eat, maybe a nesting structure somewhere else they could pay for on another city property, something to that extent.
Commissioner Kohler, would you like to take a stab at a motion?
Commissioner Flake has it written down very nicely, so I might let her do it.
All right, Commissioner Flake.
Okay, my condition actually would be prior, would be along with landscaping of Outlot A and the pocket park, there will be planting in the pocket park of at least 2 cottonwood trees, 2-inch caliper. And the reason why I'd like to keep the specificity of the cottonwood trees is that there's a tendency not to plant cottonwood trees generally because they are not good street trees. They do come apart easily when they get older. They are more brittle. We don't often use them as landscape plants, especially on small lots, because they're not really appropriate there. But in this particular location, they would be appropriate, and I would hate to miss the opportunity to put a habitat tree of Colorado where it might actually do some good. Realizing again, 2-inch caliper is not going to be a nesting facility for a while. If there's another sentence we should add in there talking about and other nesting applicability or some kind of a structure would also be possible.
Commissioner Kohler.
I'm trying to think of how we could word that. And appropriate mitigation, appropriate, and also appropriate mitigation developed in coordination with the city and the developer. I don't know if that's too vague.
Yeah, we need our city attorney. Something along the lines of allowing city staff to have final approval.
Exactly.
Right. So Commissioner Flake her pen is flying wildly. Commissioner Flake.
So I've added also appropriate mitigation for nesting sites in that area.
Appropriate mitigation. Is there any more?
No, that's as much as I got. That's a little vague, but one of the issues that we were addressing was comments made specific to that area about nesting sites for existing owls and hawks. And so to have it move to another part of the city doesn't get that done. Having a different kind of non-habitat tree doesn't get that done.
Right. So can we get a motion going here? Commissioner Kohler.
So I'll make a motion to approve PZR 2018-8B with the addition of a condition number 4, which would read, along with landscaping of Outlot A and the Pocket Park, there will be planting of at least 2 cottonwood trees in the Pocket Park, of at least 2 cottonwood trees 2 inches in caliper, and also appropriate mitigation for nesting sites in the area.
Jane, do you have that? Jane has that. Okay. Any questions from the commission as to what the motion is? Commissioner Pullen.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to second that motion. The other thing I wanted to do real quickly, Mr. Tracy had mentioned the issue with his little west boundary lane. And it was mentioned earlier, and I believe, if I'm correct, currently Mount Audubon kind of comes to an end at the south part of Mountain View Estates subdivision. And then it sounds like there's a gate or something at some point shortly thereafter.
There's a barrier.
A barrier of some sort. I'm just wondering, for Mr. Tracy's edification and to kind of protect his property and the work that they do in grading that property, what should he do? Is there anything he can do to help keep people from using that road? You know, whether it's putting in another gate or putting in no trespassing signs. Can the city give him some suggestions to work so that he can protect the work that he's done in keeping that west lane graded? I mean, and it doesn't have to be worked into this, but is that something that he can talk to the city where they can recommend you put up this kind of sign, no trespassing, no, this is a private lane? Is that something that he can come to the city and say, hey, what do I need to do to keep people off of this property?
So Commissioner Poland, his property is in Boulder County. It's not in our jurisdiction.
Okay.
So I presume as long as it's on his property line, he can do whatever is allowed in Boulder County zoning laws as far as walls or fences, signage.
Okay. So the thing for him to do would be then to contact Boulder County to understand what he can do to protect his private lane.
Yeah, and also, of course, this will be a much longer process, but as we get closer to construction, there will be a project manager assigned to this from Public Works. And, you know, their phone numbers will be available as well to, if they're want to have any discussions about any potential issues with construction, traffic, and noise.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Levison.
There was a well-publicized issue about a cottonwood tree on Pratt Street that was spreading cotton everywhere, that was forced to be cut down. So when you're looking at cottonwood trees, are you wanting to specify a cottonless cottonwood?
Commissioner Flake.
My understanding from Don Burchett is that the city has 3 in mind that are cottonless that they will allow to be planted. And I would assume that the city landscaper expert person would know what those are.
That's correct. They are cottonless.
Commissioner Tetzloff.
Maybe that knowledge that I just gained of cottonless cottonwood trees, kind of like a seedless watermelon, I feel a little uncomfortable making such a specific request. I am admittedly not an urban forestry expert, and not leaving any sort of wiggle room in that condition for an urban forestry expert from the city to say, maybe it just doesn't work here, or here's another species that would work better for the city, makes me a little uncomfortable with us just saying we should plant they need to plant 2 of these trees.
Further discussion? We have a motion that's been seconded. It's on the floor. Seeing nobody jumping forward, let's take a vote. Okay, that motion passes 6-1. Commissioner Tetzloff dissenting. Let me read the notification here. This item now enters a 7-day appeal period. During this time, any aggrieved party may appeal the Commission's decision by submitting a written appeal letter stating why the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision should be amended or reversed by City Council. All appeals must be in writing and must be received in the City Clerk's office and the Planning Office within the 7-day appeal period, which begins Thursday, June 21 at 8 a.m. and ends Wednesday, June 27 at 5 p.m. Mr. Kipfer, thank you very much for your presentation and answering all of our questions. Appreciate your time. Ava, thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll reconvene at 9 o'clock. it works. You just keep talking and talking, and then everybody realizes, oh. Okay, so I think Don Burchett has hopefully some guidance for us about agenda item number 6, which was 1601 to 1607 Kembark Street.
Well, the applicant's here, actually.
The applicant is now here. Oh, fabulous. Okay, great. Yes, I would like the answer, just so we know what was possible.
So I'll play Dan just a little bit, but the specific section of the development code is 15.02.010, capital E, number 4. And under that section of code, it says an application will be considered withdrawn if the applicant fails to attend a hearing before the decision-making body. And then which to me makes it sound like you have no choice. The applicant may petition that body for reinstatement of the application within 7 days of the date of the missed hearing, and the decision-making body may reinstate the application for good cause shown. So it would be your decision to whether or not to let them continue.
Okay, so thank you, Don. Appreciate that. So Ava, let's go back. Let's just kind of recap where we were at. This was a request for an extension of time up to 1 year because of some caisson issues, some geotechnical issues requiring more research on the applicant's part. The applicant's now here, and I'm sorry, I don't know the applicant's name. I don't have it in front of me.
Brady Burke.
Brady Burke, Mr. Burke, welcome. Would you mind coming forward and just kind of giving us your recap of what's going on with your project and what it is you need the extension for?
First, I apologize for being tardy. I was walking in at the tail end of the conversation in the beginning there and was wondering if it was me. So again, I'm sorry. 1601 Kembark, we have gotten negative kind of feedback on our soils report and our geotechnical report out there, requiring us to do cased piers upwards of 50 foot in depth that put a kind of a halt in our overall plans in regards to foundation and budgets. Since then, we've looked at alternate options and looked at alternate financing options, and are requesting at this time just a little bit more time to figure out what our best path forward is to resolve this.
Any questions from the commission for Mr. Burke? Commissioner Poland.
I don't have any questions, but seeing there's no other,
Okay. Commissioner Flagg.
What is it about the soils in that particular location that causes you to have such a deep kind of foundation?
That's a very good question. I am not a geotechnical engineer, but the Western Soils who went out there, which was definitely a surprise to myself and my partner, when they went out there and did the borings, they found soils that are found around the area that create difficulties that are outside of really my knowledge. And it's up to, we rely on them to get us the proper information. But it was definitely bad news for us.
So are you alluding to bentonite or whatever is in the soil that causes the clay?
I would believe so, yeah. The clays,
does?
the clays, yes, there's bentonite in the soils, which is, yeah, there was nothing hazardous or anything else that was found. It was a clay, and that typically the bentonite is one of the characteristics, I think, of that clay that creates the issues of expansion and contraction with moisture. And they were not comfortable with it, and the soils to pretty incredible depths in that area.
are they anticipating bedrock if you go down far enough?
They were looking to go to bedrock, which they found, I believe, they guessed. They're always guessing until we get into it. I believe around 20 feet, and at that point you have to do cased piers. So it creates even more difficulty.
Thank you.
Commissioner Poland.
Okay. After hearing the question and seeing that there appears to be no other questions, going over the review criteria, A, the extension not expressly prohibited by this chapter, which it is not, and B, the extension request is filed in a form established by the PDSD and includes all exhibits and fees and has been indicated that it has been filed and all exhibits and fees have been paid. I will move that we approve PZR 2018-6A.
Okay, I'll second that motion. Is there any further discussion? Okay, Jane just wiped out my screen, which allows me to see if anybody, did anybody else want to say anything? No? Okay, all right. Okay, let's take a vote. Okay, that passes unanimously 7-0. So this item now enters a 7-day appeal period. During this time, any aggrieved party may appeal the commission's decision by submitting a written appeal letter stating why the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision should be amended or reversed by City Council. All appeals must be in writing and must be received in the City Clerk's office and the Planning Office within the 7-day appeal period, which begins Thursday, June 21 at 8 a.m. and ends Wednesday, June 27 at 5 p.m. Mr. Burke, good luck with your project, and thank you for your patience with us. Ava, thank you for walking us through 3 projects tonight in such good order. Let me get back to my agenda. And next is final call, public invited to be heard. Only 2 people left in the audience. Would anybody like to come forward and speak about something that's not on tonight's agenda? You're not moving, so the answer is no. We'll close the public invited to be heard. Any items from the commission? Seeing none, we'll close that. Any items, our council representative is not here. Items from planning manager Don Burchett? None? Unless anybody's unless anybody objects, we are adjourned.